Then on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 8 matchup between the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 8. You got Texas, who's coming off of 3 straight wins heading into this matchup, and suddenly the Longhorns are looking like one of the biggest contenders in the Big 12, and they're taking on Oklahoma State, a team that just took a brutal loss to TCU, but they're very much still in contention. So a crucial game for both these teams moving forward, as the Big 12 is still wide open heading into the later parts of October. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with your team trends. Texas beat Iowa State 24-21 in their Week 7 matchup, so a solid win there for the Longhorns, and they are 5-2 on the season. And of course, Texas has taken a couple of losses. They lost to Texas Tech about a month ago. Of course, that was an overtime game and a very close one for that matter. And they also lost to Alabama back in Week 2. Obviously, the Crimson Tide, one of the top teams in the country. But nonetheless, Texas is 5-2, ranked 20th in the nation heading into this matchup. And they travel to Oklahoma State, who just lost to TCU 43-40 in double overtime. The Cowboys, they were controlling that game for a long time, but TCU snuck back in and they stole a win off of Oklahoma State. And now the Cowboys have taken their first loss of the season. They're 5-1 heading into this matchup. Games will be on Saturday, October 22nd in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So the Cowboys are the home team for this one. And the spread is going Texas by 6. So despite Texas going on the road and being ranked a decent ways lower than Oklahoma State, they're actually favored by almost a touchdown in this matchup. Over under 64.5. And your FPI is going Texas 66%. So Longhorns are decently favored in this matchup. Series history, Texas leads at 26-10. But Oklahoma State won the last matchup, and they've also won 3 out of the past 5. Stat comparison for this one, Texas is 20th in points per game this season, 13th in points allowed. So overall, statistically, Texas is a really solid team on both sides of the ball. They're 53rd in passers game, 36th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 54th in passing, 31st in rushing. So, Texas is off to you could say a good start in this season despite taking a couple of losses. This team is statistically one of the best in the country. Oklahoma State is 7th in points per game, 90th in points allowed. So Oklahoma State is clearly a very strong team on offense, but defensively they are allowing 27 points a game, which puts them 90th in the FBS. This is out of 131 FBS teams. They're 29th in passers a game, 50th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 129th in pass defense. So that is something to keep in mind here. Oklahoma State has got the 3rd worst in the FBS as far as it goes for pass yards allowed, as they're allowing an average of 301 pass yards a game, which is obviously a very terrible stat. I mean, these aren't early season stats. These are through 6 games for Oklahoma State. So, I mean, they've just been terrible in the passing defense so far this season. They've also played a few good quarterbacks, but I mean, nothing outstanding. That's like a huge standout, that's for sure. Of course, I mean, Bryce Young, you played him. Max Duggan last week. Max Duggan, though, I wouldn't really consider. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's improved so much, but I wouldn't consider him to be, say, a top 15 quarterback. But nonetheless, Oklahoma State 129th in pass defense. That's an issue, but they're 60th in rush defense, which isn't terrible. Your recent matchups, Texas, they beat Iowa State 24-21. Of course, they've had Quinn Ewers back for a couple of games. He's been injured, so they haven't had him for a few games in the season. Otherwise, it was Hudson Card who was playing, which he wasn't bad at all either. But Quinn Ewers, I mean, he led Texas to a 49-0 win over Oklahoma, which is outstanding to say the least. Just a huge win for Texas going up against your rival there in Oklahoma, shutting them out 49-0. I'm sure that was a pretty fun game for Texas fans there. Beat West Virginia 38-20, lost to Texas Tech. Once again, that's just a brutal loss there in overtime, 34-37. That's a game that could come back to bite too down the stretch. I mean, the Big 12 is once again, it is wide open. I mean, I think 5 to 6 teams right now could now win that conference. It's still wide open. So, I mean, for Texas, that game could come back, but I mean, for all we know, the Big 12 is still wide open. Every game matters. Yeah, that's what I'm saying here. But nonetheless, I mean, Texas Tech isn't a bad team. I think Texas Tech is actually better than their record shows. They're 3-3 right now, but I would say that they are an improved team this season versus last year. And then they beat UTSA 41-20 as well. Oklahoma State lost to TCU 40-43 in double overtime. Just a brutal loss there. I mean, Oklahoma State, they had control of that game for a long time, but TCU just snuck back in. And once again, I'd say TCU kind of stole a win from Oklahoma State there. But, I mean, double overtime. It was a hard-fought game, but definitely a disappointing loss there for Oklahoma State. Beat Texas Tech the week before, 41-31. Beat Baylor, which was a huge win, 36-25. Beat UAPB 63-7, and beat Arizona State back in week 2, 34-17. Your key points for this one: Texas 5-2 with Quinn Ewers. I think Texas is a real contender. I mean, this team has taken 2 losses, but I feel like this is a Texas team. If they can win this game, I think Texas is a team that should be taken seriously. I feel like, the Longhorns' playoff hopes at this point are pretty distant. Something big needs to happen, and a lot of upsets need to occur if a 2-loss Texas team could run the table and get into the playoff. But Longhorns, I do think this team is very much capable of still a New Year's Six bowl game. They're within reach of that. The Big 12 is once again a wide-open conference. I said going into last week, I could see 8 teams winning the Big 12 heading into Week 7. Now, after Week 7, heading into Week 8, I would say probably 5 teams. I'd say 5 to 6 teams are still able to win the conference. We've narrowed that down a little bit. Now with Baylor being 1-2 in the conference, it's looking tough for them. And obviously Oklahoma's 1-3 in conference. You can't really see them, them making a run unless insanity just happened. But Texas, it is within the Longhorns' reach, that's for sure. They're overall a solid team on offense, and defensively they show promise. This is a chance for a huge win for Texas going up against an Oklahoma State team that maybe is a bit vulnerable right now, just taking a brutal loss on the road to TCU last week. Oklahoma State coming off of a disappointing, once again, brutal loss to TCU there. That could have led Oklahoma State to a 6-0 record, giving them another signature win as well, but in the end, they took the loss. So you got to focus on winning this one here. But Oklahoma State, they've offensively been a really good football team, averaging 45 points a game, which is one of the best in the country. But then again, their defense is allowing an average of 29 points a game, which is not ideal. That definitely needs to improve if Oklahoma State wants to be a national contender, and that's what we've been saying for the past few weeks. This defense just needs to be better, especially in the passing defense. Once again, 301 average pass yards allowed per game is a terrible stat there. So Oklahoma State on offense, they're capable of being a national contender. It's just the defensive side of the ball has been an issue for Oklahoma State this season. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Texas and Oklahoma State coming up here in Week 8. And I'm going to go with Texas here. 38-31 is my predicted final score. I just think Texas, they've won 3 straight. This is a team with Quinn Ewers. They're finding their way. They're coming off of, once again, 3 straight wins. You've got to include that Oklahoma win as well. And Texas is looking as good as they have this entire season. So I think the Longhorns are starting up a run that could lead them to the Big 12 title game here. And I feel like they are just overall the more solid team in this matchup. Oklahoma State really good on offense, but defensively they've struggled at many points this season, and I feel like in this game they end up allowing 38 points to Texas, which in the end is going to be too much for Oklahoma State. So I'm going to say 55% towards Texas, over under 64.5. I'll take the over for this matchup and Texas to cover the spread in the end, which is currently 6 points towards Texas. So the spread is tough to predict here, but I do have Texas win this game by a touchdown or so. I just think, once again, even Oklahoma State coming off of a tough loss last week to TCU. Maybe if they won that game last week, they had some good momentum heading into this matchup, still as an undefeated team. Maybe I'd feel more confident going with the Cowboys here. But coming off of a tough and disappointing loss like that, I think Texas takes advantage of that. And the Longhorns get the win here in the end. And Quinn Ewers is too much for the Oklahoma State pass defense that is allowed. Once again, 301 yards a game this season, which is a terrible stat. But anyway, that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.